What's happening? Good Thursday morning to all of you. Thanks for joining me. As always, I appreciate you and your time. Last night, we did a Celtics postgame podcast. If you want to check that out, I went all in on the Celtics win, moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals, sixth time in 8 years, which is just unbelievable. Also went all in on Jason Tatum and some of the discourse that I've heard about him. Fantastic game from Al Horford. Check it out on the channel last night, Celtics postgame podcast. But we talked today about the Patriots and this schedule. And my freaking goodness, we knew this schedule was going to be tough just looking at the competition, right? Just looking at the teams that we knew they were going to be playing this year. But this schedule is even tougher than I expected. This schedule is incredibly rough on a number of different levels. Let's begin with how the season starts. Weeks 1 through 5. Woo! Not easy. Not easy at all. First game of the season, you're at Cincinnati against Joe Burrow. Then you follow that up with a home game against Seattle, which isn't really rough, honestly. They've got a rookie head coach, Geno Smith, your defense. That's not a really tough game. Then you play at the Jets. Really good defense. Aaron Rodgers returns. By the way, that is going to be the Jets home opener, which is going to be very difficult. Not fun. Thursday night game. Not fun at all. Then you have to travel to San Francisco. Now, at least you have the extra window because you play on that Thursday against the Jets. You have that extra window of time to kind of get back, make sure you're all set up to go out to San Francisco, fly to the West Coast, and play the defending NFC champions. Then you come back home and you play against Miami. So Cincinnati, Seattle, Jets, San Francisco, Miami. The games on the road at Cincinnati, at New York, at San Francisco. So 3 of the 5 games on the road to begin the year. And when you look at Miami, we'll get into more of this later on, but when you look at Miami, Miami is playing here in New England on the first weekend of October, which is great for Miami. We know the weather, right? It's best to get Miami late in the season here at Foxborough, but you actually play Miami in New England in October, which is not the best result for the Patriots. Now, based on the forecasted win totals, right? Based on the over-unders that Vegas threw out there going back a couple of months ago, the Patriots have the third toughest schedule, weeks 1 through 5. The third toughest schedule. So it does not start out easy. Not at all. Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Brock Purdy and company, Tua Tagovailoa, and all those weapons in Miami, playing against Mike McDaniel's offense. I mean, right out of the gates, this defense is going to be tested. And again, we knew this defense was going to get tested when you looked at the teams that were on the schedule and the roll call of quarterbacks, which we'll get into a little bit later as we string them together. You knew this was going to be a difficult task for the Patriots defense to begin with. But right out of the gates, week 1, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, rough. Seattle's offense, not super easy. I mean, Geno Smith is not a great quarterback, but they have weapons, right? They've got Njigba. They've got Metcalf. They've got others. Then you play against Aaron Rodgers in his assortment of weapons that the Jets have kind of stockpiled over the last couple of years. The 49ers offense is no joke. Miami's offense in warmer weather, obviously no joke. So right out of the gates, you have the third toughest schedule through the first 5 weeks. The Patriots also went to the NFL, and they said, hey, NFL, please do us a solid. We've got to play against Arizona. We've got to play against San Francisco this year. Both of those games on the West Coast. Can you help us out? Can you give us a little bit of an olive branch? Can you allow us to play both of those West Coast games back-to-back weeks so we can somewhat limit the travel? The NFL looked the Patriots dead in the eye, and their reaction was, no. We're not going to allow you to play back-to-back weeks on the West Coast. We're not going to make it just a little bit easier for you. Nah. That's not going to happen. We're going to have you fly out to San Francisco in late September, and then guess what? As a nice early Christmas present, you get to fly out to Arizona in the middle of December. Congratulations. Have a good time with that, New England. We appreciate the suggestion, but we're not helping you out. I said yesterday, and I got all of this wrong. Great job by me. But I thought the Patriots would get Arizona and San Francisco back-to-back weeks to make the travel a little bit lighter for them. I thought their bye week would be about middle of the season. I was wrong. We'll get to that a little bit later. But when you look at having to travel out to San Francisco for that September 29th game, and then having to travel back out to the West Coast to play against Arizona in the middle of December, the Boston Herald reported yesterday that the Patriots have the fourth most air miles in the NFL this year. When you look at their schedule, they are going to be flying around the fourth most in the league. Tons of travel, tons of flying, coast to coast, twice. Of course, they've got to go out to London to play the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're going to be constantly on a plane, flying forever in 2024. I'm sure Gerard Mayo not thrilled about that. A lot more thoughts coming up on the Patriots schedule. First, don't forget, take a second of your time. Give us that thumbs up. Don't forget to like the podcast, like the YouTube channel. While you're here, if you enjoy the content, you can also subscribe to the channel. Looking for 3,500 subscriptions. We're slowly getting to that point. Let's continue to support this. Like, comment, subscribe, and of course on Spotify and Apple Pods, you can rate and review, which also helps the program. The bye week is brutal. The bye week is unbelievably brutal. Now, my guess again yesterday, going off of prior schedules and how sometimes these things work, I figured the Patriots would get their bye after going to London. It would make sense. Smack dab in the middle of the season, right around week 8, nice bye week, kind of get your wits about you after traveling out to San Francisco, traveling to London. But again, the NFL said, that's not what we're interested in. The bye week is week 14 for the Patriots. That is rough. You want to talk about trying to stay healthy in a season? When you get the bye week on week 14, good luck to you. You've got to have incredibly good fortune to get to the bye week. When you have the 14th week bye, you've got to have incredible fortune to have the opportunity to be healthy for the final stretch. That is a brutal bye week with all of the travel that they have to do, with the first 5 games that they face. To have the bye week 14, that's just the extra icing on the cake that is sprinkled on top by the NFL. The Patriots got their ass kicked with this schedule, folks. Got their ass handed to them. The league is doing them no favors whatsoever. You won 4 games last year. Well, try to get to 4 wins this year. I mean, that feels like the message. Which brings me to this. When does Drake May start? Now, I've been saying, I think Drake May will start at some point this season. I don't know if it's going to be week 1, week 7, week 13. I don't know when. But now when you look at the schedule, you tell me the portion of the schedule that feels like a comfortable landing spot for the rookie quarterback to play in his first game. It's very difficult to, set up a path here where you can feel really, really good about throwing Drake May into the deep end. I mean, you look at the schedule again, the first 5 weeks, rough. Will you start May against Joe Burrow? You're going to start May against Seattle and Mike McDonald's defense. You're going to start him on the road against the Jets, primetime game, home opener for the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. That place will be going crazy. Are you going to start Drake May against the defending NFC champions on the road in San Francisco? Or are you going to play him against Miami in week 5? So is there a spot there where Drake May makes sense? Pretty difficult to throw him into the mix. Now, of course, if he's ready and he looks polished somehow before the season begins, as I've stated from the beginning, then you roll with Drake May and you see how he battles adversity. But if you're looking to slow play him and be super patient, and judging by how they handled him at rookie minicamp, I would imagine that's how the Patriots want to handle May this year. If you're going to be patient, then when is the spot? It's tough to envision him starting a game in the first 5 weeks of the season. Now, you would think, hey, maybe after the bye week, but are you really going to wait until week 14 or 15 to throw Drake May out there? Is that too late in the season? Or is it just perfect? Now, I thought, hey, maybe about middle of the year, unless Jacoby Brissett led this team to a 6-2 start or something like that, which is very, very unlikely, as we know. I figured that about the middle of the year, May would get his shot. You gave Jacoby the chance to start for the first half of the season. He plays 6, 7, 8 games. You see where you're at. You're very likely to be under 500 at that point. Then you slide May in there comfortably so he starts a game. And you try to find the perfect opponent. And the bye week would make that 1,000 times easier because you take the week off. You give May that extra week to prepare, to get ready for that first start. Bingo, bango, he's out there the next week. Well, now with the bye being so late in the year, very difficult to envision that May is going to be held back for 13, 14 weeks. And then you look at the bye and what happens after the bye. After your bye week, it's not easy. So if you are going to wait until the bye week and you start May after the bye, he faces Buffalo in 2 of the final 4 games. So he starts against the Buffalo Bills, division rival, a team that is likely battling for seeding in the playoffs. He would have to play Buffalo 2 out of the final 4 weeks of the season, which again isn't very easy for the young man. But maybe he doesn't need easy. We don't want to handle him with kid gloves, right? Again, when he's ready, he'll be ready. It's just very interesting to see where the Patriots are going to pull the trigger, if they do pull the trigger, on starting May this year. The other part of this is the second half of the schedule is no joke. We talk about the first 5 weeks. The second half of the schedule, look at the offenses that you have to play in the second half of the schedule. So you go through the first 5 games that we talked about. Third toughest schedule, weeks 1 through 5, when you look at forecasted win totals. Then, in the second half of the year, you have to play the Chicago offense. Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift. So you've got to play Chicago. Then you have to play Matthew Stafford in the Rams. Then you've got to play Tua Tagovailoa, Mike McDaniel, and that Miami offense. Then you have to play Anthony Richardson in the Colts and Shane Steichen. Then you have to play Kyler Murray. And then you wrap up the season. What a way to wrap up the season. You have Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen. Holy crap. Justin Herbert is literally the meat in the Buffalo Bills sandwich. Allen, Herbert, Allen. Good luck. You're going to be all right. I mean, that is bonkers. This schedule, I don't know if it could be tougher. You don't get the back-to-back weeks on the West Coast. You get a late bye week. You have an incredibly tough first 5 games. You have a really tough end of the season by going against Allen, Herbert, and Allen. Like, where do you look at this schedule and feel decent about? I mean, after the bye week, you fly out to Arizona. Then you fly back and you've got to play at Buffalo. So after your bye week, fly out to play the Cardinals, fly back at Buffalo, then finish up against Herbert and the Chargers, and then last week of the year, Josh Allen and the Bills again. This is a suffocating schedule. Absolutely suffocating. More thoughts coming up in a minute. But first, I want to remind you that the Nick Cattle Show is brought to you by Warzone Paintball and Airsoft. Our friends out there in North Kingston, Rhode Island, 30-plus acres of land. Go out there. Have yourself a great time. Warzone Paintball and Airsoft. They have paintball and airsoft, all ages, 6 and up. They'll be safe. It's casual. It's low-key. If you've never played before, they will take care of you with their great staff. 4.9 online star rating for this staff. Warzone Paintball and Airsoft. Just show up. Jeans, good shoes, long sleeve shirt. They take care of the rest. Don't forget, North Kingston, Rhode Island. Weather is going to be turning around. Earlier this week, we had tremendous weather. I mean, Tuesday it was 80 degrees as I was driving to physical therapy. It's unbelievable. So as the weather gets better, you can head out to North Kingston and have yourself a day with some friends, maybe some family members. Warzone Paintball and Airsoft, 401-228-6366, 401-228-6366, and let them know that the Nick Cattle Show sent you. More thoughts on this schedule. The NFL has certainly spoken, right? Again, they didn't give the Patriots any breaks with the San Francisco-Arizona situation. They did not give them any breaks with the late bye week. They did not give them any breaks with the first 5 games and then finishing up with Herbert Allen after you fly to Arizona to play the Cardinals late in the year. No breaks given. No Fs given by the league. One more thing that they did is that they clearly told Robert Kraft, we don't think your team is good. Your team wasn't good last year. We don't think your team is going to be good this year. Your team is far from must watch. You no longer have Tom Brady. You no longer have Bill Belichick. And we no longer want you in primetime. We are not interested in you playing a primetime game this year. The Patriots have one single solitary primetime game. And it is the aforementioned primetime game against the Jets on September 19th. So the way you look at this is at Cincinnati against Joe Burrow and company, you come back home against the Seahawks, then you're staring at back-to-back games on the road, and the first road test after that Seattle game is at the Jets Thursday night. Jets home opener. Aaron Rodgers, if healthy. I don't know if he's going to have an American flag with him that night. That was cheesy, wasn't it? But that's your only primetime game. September 19th. Now, later on in the year, the last 2 weeks, the league leaves open the schedule, so maybe you end up playing against the Chargers or the Bills in primetime. I find that hard to believe because I just don't think you'll be in a spot to be contending for the playoffs. But your only primetime game is on Thursday night, September 19th, the Jets home opener. Again, good luck. That New York crowd is going to be rabid. Into the defense. I wish you well. I've talked about this defense during the offseason. They were a top 10 DVOA defense last year. And if you're wondering what DVOA is, they weight it towards the schedule and expectations and all of that stuff, right? And then they tell you it's a better feel for how good your defense was instead of points per game and other stuff. That's kind of old school. DVOA, the metric, the Patriots were 9th in the league last year defensively. They're going to have to be even better this year. They're going to have to be possibly significantly better this year on that side of the football than they were in 2023. You just have the murderer's row of quarterbacks, man. You've got all the guys in your division, Tua twice, Rodgers twice, Allen twice. Again, Allen, those 2 times, late in the year, 2 out of the final 3 weeks, you've got to go against Josh Allen. So you've got to deal with your in-division quarterbacks, which are difficult. I haven't even mentioned C.J. Stroud, who you've got to play against. Burrow, Herbert, Caleb Williams in that offense. It's a nightmare. It is a nightmare. The defense is going to be challenged. If this defense finishes in the top 10 in DVOA, they will have earned that this year. There will be no questions. There will be no, oh, well, they had to play backup quarterbacks. They had to do this. They had to do that. No. You had to play a murderer's row of QBs. Your schedule is stacked with top 10 quarterbacks to face. So whatever the defense does well this year, they will have deserved it. And I don't want to hear any slander about that side of the ball if they compete this year, because this schedule is just bananas. In Miami, they're loving this. Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins, they got their feet kicked up on the table. They're drinking margaritas. They get to play here in New England in the first weekend of October. That's perfect for them. Freaking perfect. They play in New England on October 6th. I'm sure it's going to be a nice seasonable day for the Miami Dolphins. Maybe they'll have to deal with some rain. Maybe. But October 6th is a huge break for Miami. Huge. And then New England has to go down to Miami right around Thanksgiving time on November 24th. So you would anticipate the weather being warm down there, right? Not as warm as if it's September or October, but still. In November, you could be looking at what, 80s in Miami? Still having some humidity. So for Miami, this is great. They get to come up here in New England early October. Shouldn't be freezing out. Shouldn't be any snow. And then New England has to come to your house in late November. Perfect setup for the Dolphins. They're living life. With all of that said, again, I think this schedule is mostly wretched for the Patriots. But there are some silver linings. I'm going to give you some silver linings. You might think I'm crazy, but I've got a few silver linings. Before I get to that, don't forget to give us that thumbs up as you watch this podcast on YouTube, as you listen to us on Spotify, Apple Pods. You can also rate and review, but throw your comments in as well. That will help support the show. And subscribe. Take a second of your time and just click that thumbs up and then click on subscribe and you're good to go. By the way, Patreon news. I have a Patreon channel, $5 a month, $1.25 a week. I am adding an all-new podcast to that Patreon page. It's starting a week from tomorrow. It's going to be called Off the Cuff. So we're going to talk about some national sports stories. We're going to talk about some lifestyle stuff. Off the Cuff podcast, exclusive to Patreon members. $5 a month, $1.25 a week, which now means Patreon members get 2 exclusive podcasts every week. They get Wednesday night's Boston Sports exclusive content podcast, and then they get Off the Cuff on Friday. Sign up right now, $5 a month. All right, here's some silver linings for you. We've got a few silver linings, not too many, but I cobbled together a few silver linings. Number 1, the Patriots will only leave Foxborough once in October. So for the entire month of October, aside from your trip to London to play the Jaguars on October 20th, you will be here in New England. You get to sleep in your bed. You get to see your family. So October, not much travel at all. The one trip to London, other than that, you're hanging out in Foxborough. You're at Gillette Stadium. Now, of course, that means, as we told you earlier in this podcast, the Patriots have the 4th most air miles this year in the NFL. That means that you're traveling a hell of a lot in September, November, and December. But again, we're looking for silver linings. You leave New England once in October for that London game. The lack of primetime games because of that, because you're only going to have one Thursday night game, you don't have any Sunday nights or Monday nights, that actually means you have more days rest than your opponents. Now, this is a legitimate silver lining. This, to me, could be the best news. Could be the best news for the Patriots. So Brian Burke of ESPN posted this last night on Twitter. When you look at the best net rest differential, what the hell does that mean, Nick? It means how many days do you get rest more than your opponents, okay? So how many more days do you get rest in between games than your opponents? You total those days up, and it would give you the net rest difference. Got that? So the Patriots, when you look back, according to Brian Burke of ESPN, you go back to 2002. So you go back to more than 20 years ago. The Patriots are tied for the second most rest days versus their opponents, okay? The best net rest. Patriots are number 2 on the list. The Ravens are at the top. The Ravens have a number of Thursday night games this year, and they also have a Wednesday game. That's fun. You get the Christmas game on Wednesday. Yeah, we're playing football now on Wednesday. So the best net rest differential since 2002, the Ravens are number 1 in that list this year, but the Patriots are actually number 2 behind them. So they have a lot more rest than their opponents. That's actually a big deal. That is a significant silver lining. You know, not as much as, hey, you get to stay home in October aside from taking a trip to London. This is significant. You have a number of days of rest more than your opponents this year. That's good news. You should be going into these games feeling pretty spry compared to the opposition. Another thing I would say is, much like October, when you don't travel a ton, you only go to London. Very little travel at the end of the season. You have your bye week. Then, of course, once you're done with your bye, you have to fly out to Arizona. But once you're done with that Arizona trip, you take the trip to Buffalo. Not a big deal. Then you play the Chargers here in Foxborough, and then you finish the season against Buffalo here at Gillette Stadium. So not a lot of travel in October and not a ton of travel at the end of the year. Bye week at Arizona, but then at Buffalo, and then home and home. So you finish the year with not having to travel a ton. And I think that's the reason why the NFL, they look at the Patriots and they say, we are not going to give you, and by the way, Brad Marchand is practicing for the Bruins right now. That's a good sign for tomorrow night. So what I think the NFL did was they said, we're not going to give you back-to-back weeks on the West Coast. We're not going to give you that San Francisco, Arizona gift. But what we will do is we'll have you play against the Jets on Thursday night before you have to go out and play San Francisco. So we're going to give you those extra couple of days so you can get out to San Francisco. And then against Arizona, the NFL said, we're going to give you the bye week before you've got to fly back out to Arizona. So they could have given the Patriots a better favor than that and had Arizona, San Francisco back-to-back, but it's not as bad as it could be. They are giving the Patriots extra rest because of Thursday Night Football before the 49ers, and they're giving them extra rest before they fly out against Arizona with the bye week. So at least they gave them that. All right, let's jump into a super chat here. Backyard Cyclist left a very nice comment for me in the YouTube comments yesterday. Look at the bright side, Nick. We will get another high first-round draft pick next year. I'm not ready to go with the old W's, L's yet. That'll happen as we get closer to the season. I actually want to see this team on the field. I want to see what they look like. I want to see who's playing left tackle. I want to see who's playing left guard. How does Drake May look? Is any shot that he's going to be ready week one? Rookie wide receivers. I want to see all of that play out throughout camp and the preseason. But yeah, I mean, this schedule is just incredibly challenging. There's no other way to look at it. Incredibly challenging for a team that has a lot of young players, had a ton of turnover during the offseason on the offensive side of the football. They have a lot of new coaches, pretty much an entirely new offensive coaching staff. You've got a first-time head coach in Gerard Mayo, and you have this kind of schedule. Man, oh man. I mean, there's no other way to look at it but say it's rough. It starts rough. It ends rough. It's just rough all around. The NFL did really no favors for the Patriots. So if you were optimistic about the season, this schedule might temper your optimism a little bit. If you were pessimistic, you might be actually celebrating because, as Backyard Cyclist says, if you were pessimistic to begin with, looking at the schedule before we knew when these games were actually going to be played, you look at this schedule now, you're looking at this and you're saying to yourself, this is a joke. We're going to be picking in the top 5, top 6. Giddy up again next year. Thank you, Backyard Cyclist, for the super chat. You can send your super chat to jump to the front of the line with your comment, question. Also, financially support the program. I'm working on getting the PayPal link up there. I always forget. I'm working on it. People tell me all the time, just throw the PayPal up there. I'm going to work on it. But thank you, Backyard Cyclist, for your contribution to the show. All right. Before we go, I want to end on a happy note because this schedule is rough, as I just said. So let's end on a happy note, shall we? Christian Gonzalez is coming back. Gonzalez should be healthy, at least by training camp, should be ready by week 1. And I just wanted to remind everybody because, sometimes we forget there's a lot going on. You got the Bruins, you got the Celtics, you got the draft, you got all this Patriot stuff going on. So sometimes we overlook things. And so when we talk about Gonzo being a legitimate cornerback one, some might say, well, he's not there yet. Some might forget how good he was in the first 5 weeks of last year. So let me remind you, Scout the NFL on Twitter posted this a day or two ago. Christian Gonzalez during his rookie season against number one wide receivers. Week 1, A.J. Brown had 19 routes against Gonzalez. 4 catches, 47 yards. Vontae Smith had 11 routes. 2 catches, 22 yards, and a pass breakup. Tyreek Hill ran 17 routes against Christian Gonzalez. Hill had 0 catches, 0 yards, and Gonzalez had a pick. Jalen Waddle ran 4 routes, 1 catch, 15 yards. And finally, I remind you that Christian Gonzalez absolutely locked down Garrett Wilson against the Jets. And yes, Zach Wilson was the quarterback. That had something to do with it. But Wilson had 23 routes, 3 catches, and only 18 yards. So we end on this good note. Remember that last year's first-round pick. With all the talk, all the pomp and circumstance about this year's first-round pick. Remember last year's first-round pick is a stud. And if he stays healthy, you have a legitimate stick me on the island, fellas, and I'll be just fine at outside cornerback number 1. So that's your good note. That's your happy note to end this podcast on this Thursday. Enjoy a night off. I don't know about you, but I'm actually looking forward to having one night without having anxiety and feeling the pressure of postseason. Bruins play tomorrow night. Celtics wrapped up their series last night, so they got a few days rest. So enjoy a night. Enjoy a night off from B's and C's. Get ready for Game 6 tomorrow night at the TD Garden between the Bruins and the Panthers. Enjoy yourself on this Thursday. Stay dry with this crappy weather. Back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Until then, this has been The Nick Cattle Show.